Hello, welcome to the Brain Scrub, a somewhat improvised approach to mental health. I'm your host, Glenn Sollers. Thanks for tuning in today. Yesterday, I was watching Season 6, the final episodes of Working Moms, which is a fantastic TV series filmed in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. I love it. There's so many life lessons in the show. And yesterday, when I was watching the show, there's one character on the show. Her name's Anne, and she has problems with anger management. And it shows up everywhere in her life. It shows up in her work environment. It shows up with her family. It doesn't really show up with her friends. But our anger and ability to manage it has an impact on others in our life. And what happened near the end, near the final episodes, was the husband finally said to her, "I fear you. I don't know what to say. I don't want to say anything. In fact, I prefer not to be around you." And it hit her hard. Sometimes we struggle giving our spouses feedback or getting into some healthy conflict to discuss what's going on. And I believe we sometimes forget that we're on the same team. That, yeah, we may feel it's safe for me to openly express my emotions and my anger with another person, especially if they're my spouse. But do I deserve that as a spouse? Or is a better alternative for us to really check in with our emotions, talk about our emotions? What are we making things mean? What is the interpretation of it? How is it coming across, so that we don't take things the wrong way? And to have that open and honest dialogue is so important, especially knowing that many of us were blocked from our emotions at a younger age. And then what happens is we sometimes block our emotions with our spouse, or we have this passive aggressive nature that we start using with our spouse, and we may just blow up versus not shutting the door on emotions. Because what that indirectly does is it tells the spouse, you know what, your emotions are not welcome here, and you know what, my emotions are not welcome here. Let's both close the door on our emotions, and then it'll be unsafe for both of us, and then eventually we'll just blow up and we'll get into a heated argument, which gets people nowhere. I thought about this a bit, and then I thought, would I act the same way with a friend if they said something to me that maybe I didn't agree with? Or maybe they said, "Do you mind if I give you some feedback?" And they gave me some feedback. Would I explode with them? Likely not. Why is it that we feel we can sometimes do that with our spouse? The person that we live with, the person that we sleep with, the person that's part of our life, for hopefully which will be an endless journey until death. Folks, the point I'm trying to make here is that if you fear giving your spouse feedback, if you fear being open and honest with your spouse, if you fear losing the relationship, if you bring up your feedback, what message is that sending to both of you? Versus creating a space where both of you can openly express what's going on, making it okay to do so, working with one another on, okay, what are you making that mean? Is that what I meant for it to be? Was that my intent? Versus jumping to a conclusion such as, "You're being condescending. How dare you use those words with me?" Whatever it might be, because that shuts down conversations and it puts us in an enemy versus enemy position. It's like a war starts to enrage versus seeking to understand what's going on both ends. It's like you're both you're both dictators in a country, and you're hitting your nuclear bomb buttons. Versus, okay, before we hit the buttons, before I explode, let's seek some understanding here and discuss things. Because if we don't do that, we start suppressing it. We start pushing things away, which pushes the relationship away. If you think about two countries that are in battle, it's not like they're negotiating with each other at all. They start to develop extreme hatred for one another. They start attacking more. They start pushing on their offenses. They start taking everything personally. And there's so much carnage as a result of this inability to understand, what are your needs? What are my needs? What do you want? What do I want? What is my intent? What is your intent? Is it true in terms of what I said being what you think I said? On both sides. But it takes work, and it takes acknowledging that and bringing up that whenever I bring something up with you, I feel like I'm pulling the pin out of a hand grenade. So I don't do it. And then couples shut down. And it just gets worse. And then somebody may talk to other people about, oh yeah, they're doing this, they're doing that. Well, have you had a conversation with them? No. Why? Well, because I fear having a conversation with them. And then we live in this fear, which builds stress, which leads to inaction, which leads to worry, which leads to, in some cases, cheating on your spouse. It leads, in some cases, to avoidance of any issue, going behind one's back and doing things that you shouldn't be doing, which erodes trust, erodes relations, erodes connection. And for some of us, maybe it means a sleepless night in two separate beds because we cannot work things out. Your spouse is part of your team. One gets married generally or lives with somebody because of some deep connection, deep love, deep care. And to not take that for granted. We wouldn't behave the way we do in business. Why do we feel it's okay to do it this way in our relationship when there's so much more at risk? Our personal happiness, level of contentment, stems a lot from what happens in our home environment. We can learn from what triggers our reaction with our spouse by following these simple steps. Okay, stop before you emotionally react. Breathe. Say to the other, this is what you just said. This is how I interpreted it. What are your judgments? What are your assessments? Is that what you meant? You might be surprised at the response. And then you can get into a conversation. Well, when you said that, this is how I felt. What did you make it mean about you? Why are you letting that trigger you? Or why does that trigger you? Talk a bit about that. What you're doing by doing this process is you're not suppressing your emotions. You're catching it in the moment and working with one another so that in future, you're setting some framework and some guiding principles about how do we both express our emotions in a safe way so that we can have a stronger connection with one another. Versus the complete opposite, where we might feel like we're walking on eggshells around our spouse, where they say something that offends us, but we decide we're not going to say anything because I know where this is going to go. That's how relationships break down. Our partner likely wants us to be happy, just like we want to be happy, and we want to be content, and we want to be able to express ourselves with one another so we can feel safe. And a lot of stress is an inability to speak up, is an inability to share what's really going on for us. And not only does that stress us out, it stresses our spouse out because they know what's going on. They know us. They can likely read our verbal and nonverbal cues. They see our tone in action, our body language. And if we just hide from it and not even do anything about it, we're not helping either of us out because there is an implication on others. But to be in a relationship where we can both grow, develop, become more united, become stronger, is no different than life in general. Imagine if you had no aspirations in your life. How fun would life be? It's nice to have some goals and to say, wow, we're going to have the best relationship. We're going to work together. We're going to be there for one another. And I see couples like that out there, and I just admire it so much that they have this ability to just be so emotionally connected to one another. And it's hard because, again, we might have been brought up not to bring up our emotions. And then what we're doing with our spouse is we are repeating history. Don't bring up your emotions. Okay? If I'm not going to bring up my emotions, then you're not going to bring up your emotions. And then we lead to emotional disconnection, and then relationship breakdown, and then dissatisfaction, and then avoidance. Communicate with a sense of wonder. State what's going on for you. Share what do we do in these situations. Because if you don't, both sides suffer the consequences. Folks, last thing I want to share is I am trying to promote the importance of mental health, the importance of managing stress, the importance of dealing with our anxiety. And there's so many of us out there that are dealing with this kind of stuff. If you like what you're hearing on my podcast, please hit the like button, leave some comments. Please share this podcast with others. It's important to spread the word. It's important to build a support network. It's important to ask for help. It's important to give advice. Folks, thanks for listening.